Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziol.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Today, I have joining with me Melissa Mueller-Douglas, and she's with a company called MYRetreat, and we're going to talk about mindfulness, chocolate mindfulness. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I got the pleasure of meeting you in person a few weeks back. I also got a sample of chocolate, which was amazing, that I did share with my wife. She was very pleased that I shared it with my wife. So and I think even my children got little nibbles of it too. It was very good. And that was an unexpected treat at the end of our meeting, was this great varieties of chocolate that you offered, but we'll get to that soon. I do want to hear a little bit about you and kind of how this company came to be. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and background and how MYRetreat came to be?
Absolutely. I was born and raised here in Rochester. I left for grad school and I boomeranged back. So here I am. I started my company here 6 years ago with a brick and mortar space, and I wanted a place where I could utilize my social work background. I have my license in social work and practiced for 10 years, and I recognize that people benefit from mindfulness, whether or not they have a diagnosis of maybe depression or anxiety, or if they choose to disclose it or not, right? And
Hmm.
so I wanted to create this place where people could get together and practice mindfulness, because many people that I talk to would say, I either need to try it, and if I don't get it right, I'm going to feel like I failed, or I need to go on a 1 month excursion to another country, and therefore it got, a bit further down on their bucket list to actually get started. But
Hmm.
what I find is with a piece of chocolate that people get excited. At a minimum, there's a release of endorphins and joy that happens. And generally, what happens is they're now pairing eating chocolate with one of our mindfulness practices that we introduce to them that can be done in just a couple minutes in a day.
That's awesome. Chocolate, it makes everything better, right? So I love that little tie into things. And so what, for our listeners that may not be aware, what is mindfulness? I know it's been a trending thing for the last couple of years, but what can you explain what that is?
Mindfulness is all aware around us at all times, and all we need to do is be intentional about bringing awareness to it. So I say that fairly vague statement, right? Because for everyone that I meet, mindfulness is a little bit different. If I ask them, what does mindfulness mean to you? Or after our virtual wellness workshop, how has your perception of mindfulness changed? Most people have an understanding when they're in the present moment, when they are not thinking about the past or worrying about the future. Oftentimes, it's when they're by a body of water or in nature. And I help our clients, our groups of people who work with us with Chocolate Mindfulness for team building, to hone in that understanding of what mindfulness looks like for them and be able to have more applications to be present in, right? Not just when you're in nature. As much as I recommend getting out and getting fresh air, the reality is a lot of our times we're either sleeping, right? We're at
Mhm.
home, or we're at work or in some place of business, right? And so in order to bring mindfulness there, I recommend taking a little square of chocolate with you and your briefcase or your purse, and being able to pause for grounding in the moment. So it really is different for everyone. But what I will say is I find kids are the ones who are practicing it the most frequently,
Mhm.
and that's why we adults have phrases like "stop playing with your food" or "hurry up," "we're late," right? Because people
Yeah.
are really focused, or kids rather, are really focused, and they're really enjoying their senses, the sounds, the tastes, the aromas.
Mhm. Yeah, I was just thinking something along the lines of, my kids playing video games when you were saying that, and how centered on that one thing that they are. They're in that moment, um, to the point where, we're calling for dinner or whatever it is, they don't hear us at all, right? Um, and so I often have to tell him to be mindful of his environment around him outside of the game, right? But one of my kids in particular, even just everything that he does is he's either so extremely focused on that one thing where nothing else sort of matters, or he is literally all over the place and can't keep track of everything. So it's just funny, that was the kind of things that were going through my head, and probably some of the other parents had heads that are listening to this podcast episode. My kid is very mindful of what he's doing when I'm trying to talk to him, just not mindful of what maybe I'm trying to say.
There it
So
is. And that is something that happens in the workplace, right?
right.
Between a employer and employee, right? The HR department saying, please be mindful of X, Y, and Z, and an employee saying, I'm mindful of whatever it is they're focused on, right? And so
Right.
uh, having those circles align, uh, because everyone is only responsible for themselves, we need to first practice on identifying what mindfulness is for you, when you're experiencing it, and how you can actually use it
Mhm.
to flourish, right, and thrive in your role. And you have many roles, right? Your kid has a huge responsibility for play. That's how all of us learn, in my opinion, best is
Mhm.
through play. So just identifying that and saying, wow, right now you're being incredibly mindful of the visual in front of you, your video game, right?
Yeah.
And that is a strength, and you're really, really good at that. Where else can you use that strength to be really mindful? And that's where, when you're doing your homework and you want the visual to be on the actual homework assignment,
Sure.
how can you use that skill set that you have and apply it to other areas of your life? And then it's not something that's so foreign, something that you can't grasp, but something that you already know, just like many of us know when we're eating an incredible piece of chocolate, how we're really focused on the maybe, right? Maybe the textures, uh, whichever part is that you're really enjoying in that moment.
Yeah, that refocusing is so key, right? And you have to be in the right mindset to refocus as a parent, especially when you're talking to a kid for the third or fourth time, right? And they're really not hearing you, and you don't want to, like, you do get frustrated, right? Same thing in the workplace. Like, if you don't feel like you're being heard, and you've had this conversation with an employee or a coworker several times, and it's still repeating, it can get frustrating. So being mindful of the words that you choose and how you talk to someone is extremely important. So,
Absolutely.
and
And
chocolate never never hurts.
it tends to help. I'm reading the book right now, The Positive Advantage, and part of the section that I'm in right now is talking about how keeping a positive perspective, mindset, but then also, portraying that toward your team is how your team will then embody that, right? Because you're
Mhm.
the role model as the leader. Right? And so I can say, thinking back to our kids, right? There are certain times where my older child, who's 10, is talking to my 6-year-old the way that I sometimes find myself talking to her, right?
Right.
And then I'll pause and say, wow, you sound a lot like your mom right now. And then she'll say, wait, what? And then, oh yeah. And how does it feel when I talk to you in that way? And she'll
Right.
be, I don't like when you when you're telling me go, go, go. And so then we pause and reset. And that's the beauty of mindfulness, is that it's not like you practice it once, you get it wrong, and you just, throw it away and move on to the next thing. You can really bring a positive mindset to the idea of practicing mindfulness, and then be able to have as many resets as you need, because every moment is a new moment that you've never experienced before, and an opportunity to bring, shed a positive light on the situation, um, and focus on your senses.
Yeah, for sure. And, mindfulness has been quite the movement over the last couple of years. And there's a lot of people that are, coaching it and doing it. What makes your particular program, besides the obvious chocolate, a little different and unique? And how do you bring a certain, like, your own into that?
What I've found is, if we leave it to individuals to set aside time to practice mindfulness, there are those who practice, frequently, and there are many others who practice rarely or never. And so I bring a approach of doing it in a group setting,
Hmm.
for our wellness workshops, and having it be something that you're doing during the workday, right? So you're getting paid to practice mindfulness, instead of fitting it in, waking up earlier or going to bed later to try to fit in a new practice. And that group focus then helps with accountability, because then employers are able to, talk to their employees and say, hey, remember that wellness workshop that we did? I remember that you really liked the body scan. uh, you know would you consider practicing this? You get to know things about your colleagues, about your coworkers, that you might not have discussed around the water cooler, or the
Hmm.
virtual water cooler, right? For all of us
Yeah.
who are working remotely or hybrid, where those conversations aren't necessarily happening with deeper, meaningful conversations. And so, as we're setting an intention, like, to be your most compassionate self, right? That's not necessarily the first go to after, hey, how are you doing? What the next question is not generally, what does it feel like to be compassionate, and what do you need to give yourself to continue in that capacity? And that's where people are saying, it's May and I haven't even taken one day of vacation yet, or I want to show my clients compassion, and yet I'm not even giving it to myself. So I'm prioritizing others before me, and then it's not coming through as genuinely or authentically as I want it to, because it feels more forced, right?
Right.
So the difference is starting in a group setting, and then from there, that's the introduction to our app, where people are then able to, do it on their own, once they've been acclimated to the practices of the body scan, the guided imagery, the gratitude journaling.
Yeah, and you bring up a lot of good points, but one thing I kind of honed in on while you were speaking was the getting to know your employees, your coworkers, is sort of a lost art, especially with like the advent of in more virtual connections, right?
Right.
Um, and you can know how good an employee or coworker is at specific skills and job skills, and you can even give feedback around that, right? And give positive reinforcement. Um, but if you don't really know them, you can't really, I guess, like reward or help them feel good about what they're doing, right? Because it may not be that like they want to be praised for their skills,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So I think that that's something that mindfulness can really help with. In addition to getting to know each other, you're also sort of learning what makes you tick, what makes them tick. So can you go a little bit through like, what a typical session would be like, when you're doing your whole thing?
Absolutely. And I'd like to start by responding to what you said.
Sure.
Uh, you're absolutely right. And appreciation and recognition is something that seems to fall by the wayside, right?
Mhm.
We know that it's good to have. It's something that helps boost morale and potentially improve productivity, right? And yet it's like a nice to have, not a need to have in some companies. And so
Mhm.
so when I'm talking to prospective clients, right, in my B2B conversations, they're saying, we did a whole survey last year. We got all this feedback. People want more wellness offerings. They want, all of these things that they want,
Mhm.
but we also are now in, Q2, and maybe we haven't reached our goals. So that's not even a factor anymore. And so, or it's an afterthought, right?
Mhm.
And so one of the other benefits of a chocolate mindfulness experience is that it's a plug and play situation. You tell me what your intention is, right? You want your team to feel terrific, right?
Mhm.
And from there, that one word, we set our intention to be or feel terrific. We go through the body scan, identifying a person, pardon, uh, I'm getting ahead of myself, the body scan. For the body scan, what we do is identify which parts of our body are feeling comfort and ease. And that's a bit different from the approach that I use in social work sessions and settings, right? Individually or in groups. I was trained in helping people identify where they feel pain or discomfort in their body, so that they can not just be in their head, but also be focused on uh, the feelings in their body. And yet, I don't know anyone who I've crossed paths with that doesn't know when they have a headache or doesn't know when their back is hurting, right? We're pretty good at recognizing when there's pain. But I do know that when you break a toe, right? I don't know if you've broken a toe before,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But you start to realize how much you use that toe and how good your toes have been to you and helping you balance and walk all of this time. And you've not really ever given gratitude, right? Or taken a moment to be thankful for the parts of your body that are working. And so in lieu of needing to break bones or strain muscles to remember this, we use the body scan to identify what parts of us are feeling good. And then it helps to create a new habit so that even if you do have, a part of you that isn't feeling good, you're able to focus on the parts of your body that are experiencing ease and comfort.
Mhm.
Then we go into the guided imagery practice. So if you were envisioning your most terrific self, whatever that means for you, you would be closing your eyes, envisioning a place where you feel most comfortable and a chair in that space. And the purpose of that is to invite your most terrific self, however you define that, into this chair and start asking yourself just a couple questions. What does it feel like to have this role in your life? And what do you need to continue in that capacity? And so you're envisioning giving yourself a present. And most times, people are giving themselves something that's intangible, like a little extra time, alone time, or actually writing to friends because it's for some a lost art, right? Actually sitting down, getting stamps and writing a letter to someone to feel terrific about connecting with others. But then we gift ourselves something tangible, which is the chocolate. And I have currently 6 chocolate mindfulness sponsors that are across the United States. And they have artisan and fine chocolates that they make that are phenomenal and give back with greater good elements, like the Zora chocolate that you tried, where they're
Mhm.
giving a day of schooling to a girl in rural Ghana for every bar that's purchased, right?
Yeah.
So you know that there's a greater good element even beyond giving yourself this moment to pause and to prioritize you. And then you move into the gratitude journaling, which is where you're identifying a person, place, or thing that you're grateful for using each of the letters in the word terrific, right? For this example. So for
Mhm.
the letter T, I'm putting you on the spot. What's one thing that you're grateful for that starts with the letter T?
One thing that I'm grateful for that starts the letter T. Um, well, I guess I would say theater. That's the
Mm,
first thing that came to mind.
yes,
And I've had a
makes
little
sense.
return to that. So,
Right.
I would say that.
With improv, right?
Yeah. Yeah. See, you've been following me a little bit.
Well, in that first conversation we
Yeah.
have, you brought it up. And so that's where people get to remember, right, through
Mhm.
introspection, what it is that makes them tick, what their values are. And then if you had said Teresa, right? Someone you may or may not know with that
Yeah.
name. But if you're grateful for, Thomas, then you need to just take a quick moment and consider, would it bring you joy? Would it bring that person joy if you were to just shoot them a text, right? Or
Mhm.
give them a call and say, hey, I was in this workshop today and I remembered how grateful I am for X, right?
Yep.
And just telling them, because it helps boost your pleasure as well as the person that's receiving uh, that acknowledgement, that recognition. So
Yeah.
that's the whole experience. And after that 1 hour, which I do believe is another really cool element of the company, is these workshops are 1 hour. Everything that I just described is in 60 minutes. And that's when we're doing it with a group of 30 people, or the largest so far has been 945.
Wow.
So in that hour, it can be the full event, right?
Hmm.
Or it can be something that kicks off a day of a conference or concludes a conference where you're just reflecting on that whole day. Or one of my favorites is right in the middle, because you got to feed people, right? So they're all eating lunch, and oftentimes you want to give them something special as a treat. So I like to come in a conference day and do this 1 hour workshop right after lunch to help focus people, which is what you want, right? When you're at
Hmm.
a conference, and then get them back into the swing of the agenda.
Yeah. And during lunch, like, I know, especially it's like it's in American culture to like gobble and eat as quick as you can to get to the next thing. I know that I've been in that situation myself, even at conferences, right? So having someone come through with mindfulness to also help them enjoy that moment and savor the food that they're eating. Hopefully it's good food. um, because I think that that's something that again, we as a culture don't always stop and really enjoy the moment, and especially enjoy food, right?
Right.
Because it can be a totally different sensation if you're actually like thinking about what you're eating and tasting what you're eating, rather than trying to get done as quick as you can so you can go to that next session or talk to that next person. So I think that that's a great opportunity, and I never even thought of like having something that during lunch, and I think that's cool.
You're
Um,
absolutely right. And people connect through food, right? We
right.
connect over food. It's just as important to know what you didn't like versus what you did. And a lot of us will eat a meal and forget what meal we had yesterday, right? You
Yeah.
really have to sit and think about it. But when you're pausing intentionally, it's something that can seep into other areas of your life. So it starts with the chocolate, but we have people telling us, now before a meeting, we're actually doing a gratitude journaling exercise so that we can talk about what's already going right, because there's always more that's right than is wrong, right? Your
Right.
company's still alive, it's still in business. So there are things that are going right, even if there are crises and fires to be put out.
Sure.
uh, and that's really important to focus on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, I was wondering because we always have those coworkers, those friends, and things like that that aren't really into certain things, right? So have you ever had somebody that was just really obvious to you, not into the mindfulness training at all?
Yes.
And can you give us an example of like how that was sort of overcome?
Yes, those are my favorite. And let me say this. I don't look for conflict, right? But
Mhm.
when I'm in conflict, something in me activates, and I love helping to resolve it, right? And work through it together. That's why I went into social work. I don't shy away from conflict. What I find, first of all, is that the first time that happened, I had to look at, the whole picture from beginning to end. How did this come to be? And what I realized is that HR is who set up the wellness workshop. I offered, you can tell your people about the agenda. You can set out some chocolates to give them, a little bit of anticipation building. Here's a sample of what's going to happen in a couple weeks. However, none of that was executed. So what I learned was 10 minutes before the workshop, everyone got an email, report to the conference room, we have a meeting, which means stop what you're doing. You actually don't know what's going to be happening next. And so I had this audience of people who had no idea who I was or why I was there. And one of the first questions, which is the person that I'll give an example today, was, uh, so this is going to be an hour long. That means I'm going to have to work for an hour extra today to actually get my work done because nobody else is going to do my work while I'm here. Valid point, right? But
Mhm.
already coming in tense, already feeling like they didn't have enough time, and I'm suggesting that we slow down time.
Right.
So that could be potentially torturous, right? Feeling like torture. So what I said was, listen, I want to be as transparent as possible. This is the agenda. This is how we do it. You can ask any questions in advance. Um, and I'm going to guarantee that you get out of here on time because I do respect your time. And here are some of the reasons why uh, we were all brought here today because of the benefits of mindfulness. So I give a little bit of education and then jump right in.
Mhm.
And at the end, I decided to end the whole session 2 minutes early, which I always end right on time. But I recognize, if you have to use the bathroom before the next call, whatever it is, let's give them just a little time, right? So
Yeah.
I ended it 2 minutes early. And that same person who said, I am not going to be able to get my work done today. Why are we here? Came up to me and said, you should tell HR that you should be coming in every month. We need this here. I appreciate you being here, right? And that type of transformation is why I've been in business for 6 years, because I get joy out of seeing a transformation in a short period of time. And people uh, tell me that, they see the real life application that they can use, during the workshop. It's not like you're taking copious notes and then you're figuring out how to do it later. It's an experiential practice. And other people at that particular company came up to me afterwards and said, tonight, like you did, I'm going to share some of this chocolate with my kids when I get home and teach them what
Mhm.
mindfulness is, because I think that they could benefit from it too.
Yeah. I missed the boat on that one. I did not teach them anything about mindfulness. I just said this is delicious chocolate.
There it is.
But that is an amazing story, and you must have felt so amazing after that, right? So, um, that's really cool that that happened and you had that experience. And, did you get any feedback from any of the other employees about maybe that particular individual or, about the situation? Like, were they able to slow down and think about, their own personal lives instead of just work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do a check-in after each of those 5 practices that I shared, the intention setting, body scan, etc. So after setting the intention, we have a group intention, but I always give the opportunity if somebody says, I don't feel terrific, I have zero desire to be terrific,
Mhm.
it doesn't resonate with me. I give them an opportunity to say what it is that they set their intention for, right?
Sure.
So there's a lot of flexibility and flow that happens throughout that hour where people are checking in with themselves, especially after the body scan, where people will say, I didn't realize how good my feet are feeling. Maybe I got orthotics, right? And I just got them. I haven't thought anything more about it because now my feet feel fine. And then other people are connecting in that moment saying, hey, after this, tell me who your doctor is because I need orthotics too. But we know, and I'll only speak for myself, right? I know that even if I get a referral to go and see a specialist, if it's not something that I feel is, really pressing, it's like a nice to have, right? Like orthotics,
Mhm.
actually for myself, right? I got the referral and then I didn't end up following up on it until I have a 5K coming up. I'm going to be running the JP Morgan race
Yeah.
next week. And I decided, well, now's the time, right? I actually need to follow up on that. But if you get that positive peer pressure that happens when somebody else says, you've been talking about, your shoulders aren't comfortable. you can talk to whoever in this department and they can help get you a raise, piece to your desk, right? Or a standing
Sure.
desk, whatever it is that you need. And so you're really in the moment working out um, issues that come up for everyone, and you're doing it from a strengths-based perspective, or somebody saying, hey, I resolved this and it's working for me. So you're not just hearing, here are our gripes or here are the problems, and there's so many problems it feels overwhelming, but you're hearing, this is what I was uh, dealing with, this is how I resolved it. And then that sparks the idea for other people to say, hey, you know I could do that too, that sounds like a path that I want to follow.
That's terrific. So I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about, things that you're doing to help others, right? That's part of the show. I know one example for sure was the different types of chocolate suppliers that you have and what they do, right? Can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit about more how you give back to other companies, give back to the community? Because I know you're pretty involved. I'd love to hear more about that.
absolutely. So every Wednesday, I offer a complimentary virtual experience. And that's for those people who are considering bringing in chocolate mindfulness, but they're not sure exactly how it works. And it's an opportunity for them to try before they buy, right? Test it
Hmm.
out. And so there was a CEO that came through this week, and she had said, I've known about what you're doing. I'm following you on LinkedIn, all of the things. I watch some of your videos and eat chocolate with them. But today I decided that I needed to reset my priorities. She said that it was business, then family, then her. And she's now feeling it right in her shoulders and her back. She was saying she's just feeling the weight of stress and
Right.
anxiety. And so she said for this week that she was intentionally flipping it to prioritize herself and then her family and then her business, and just see what changes, what comes
Hmm.
of that. And so those moments of just connecting with someone and not having there be any monetary commitment is a way that I'm able to give back and
Hmm.
gift an experience to individuals who might not otherwise have tried it. And then they become the best champions that
Yeah.
I can have when they say, no, really, our whole team needs to come and experience this. So last year I was at a Disrupt HR event that did you go this year? It just happened
No,
earlier this month. I know a few people who went and thought it was wonderful again this year, but I went last year, and the leader of the United Way was speaking so eloquently. I love how she gives her speeches. One of the things that she mentioned was how much uh, giving back happens, right? There's a better way to phrase that, but
hmm
right, volunteerism that
yeah.
happens, altruism. And so I hadn't really considered, uh, let me say it this way, I hadn't really considered it that way until that talk last year, because I thought, wait a minute. So I'm not the United Way, right? I have myself, the CEO, I have a COO, and then I have a team of developers. Uh, but the hours that I've donated, right, to get people to build awareness about chocolate mindfulness, uh, it has a greater impact than just the marketing piece, right? Where people are getting to know, like, and trust me and MYRetreat. But there's truly a benefit when people come through that. And so that's when I started to set my intention for that hour once a week as being a way for me to give back. And it feels really good.
Hmm.
Uh, and it still serves the exact same purpose, but I I have a different intention, and I do believe that it comes across differently than if I were to say, now I'm going to put up my slide deck and talk to you about how you can do business with me, because I'm finding the same conversion rates either way
Hmm.
when I'm just gifting this experience and thanking the people who show up to those Wednesday events for taking the time to prioritize themselves. And that
Hmm.
leaves a much more genuine, lasting impression than if I were to say, if you book by today, I'll give you a discount or something, which
Yeah.
I don't do.
Well, I think, honestly, this has just been a taste of what you do and what chocolate mindfulness really is. And I urge our listeners to connect with Melissa. I'll have the links in the show notes and everything. But I do want to give you like, one more opportunity to kind of tell us about maybe something I didn't ask you or something you just want to share.
Mm.
Because we are running low on time, but like I said, there's just so much to unpack with what you do and how you help people. I wanted to give my listeners just a taste to kind of use that reference of what this all means. But is there anything that you definitely want to share that we haven't touched on?
Every day I'm getting together with a friend and we're going for a walk. And I put that in my calendar in yellow in my Google Calendar, right?
Mhm.
And the days that it doesn't happen because there's a conflict or whatever happens, I I feel a difference.
Mhm.
So I urge your listeners to consider what they can put in every day, whether it is eating a small square of chocolate and savoring it, or if it's something else that's truly meaningful to you and a part of your value system, right? I value an active lifestyle and getting out and getting fresh air. I prioritize that and color code it.
Mhm.
I just think it's really helpful to have a visual of when you're actually doing the things that you love so that you can see how it impacts your emotions, right? Your feelings, your connection to yourself and with others, which is uber important.
Yeah, that's terrific advice. And you're that much better when you do that reset, that thing that you love, step away from, your desk for a couple minutes even just to walk, can bring you back to that project and ready and raring to go, right? So that's awesome advice, Melissa. Well, I really appreciate having you here on That Sounds Terrific. I'm your host, Nick Koziol, and again, joining me is Melissa Mueller-Douglas. Thank you.
Take good care.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific 2 and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.